Hall series. And if you just heard that, you're being recorded. So thank you for joining us. And today's topic is reducing fire risks as a community. And so thank you all. And many of you are right on time. Thank you very much. I'm Ken Benson. I'm president of Oakland Firesafe Council, and I've welcomed you to our seminar tonight. And I live in the Oakland Hills, and as a wildfire prevention advocate, very pleased that you're joining us on this topic tonight. And you'll be hearing shortly from Sheryl Drinkwater about strengthen your home against wildfire. We'll also have Wendy Tokuda talking about community fire safety vegetation projects. We're going to open a Q&A, and please feel free to type your questions into the chat window, and then we'll have announcements at the end. All right.
Thank you, Ken. Sheryl, welcome.
Thank you. I'll just share my, so everybody can see that, I hope. Everybody good to go? All right. Oops, people's names keep popping up on the screen. So thank you, Ken, Doug, and Jen, for inviting me back to present to the Oakland Firesafe Council. Besides being an architect, I'm also a volunteer safety assessor with the State Office of Emergency Services. Along with other related professionals, we assess buildings after disasters to determine if they can be safely occupied. After my disaster experience, I started to immerse myself in the subject of home hardening. And I'm happy to share what I've learned over the last 5 years. And this talk has a lot of information, and I will go through it kind of quickly, but we will have Q&A, as you know. If a fire is coming towards your home like this, get out. Even with a hardened home, be prepared, have situational awareness, and evacuate early. Wildfires are inevitable. Does that mean that wildland-urban interface fire disasters are inevitable? Fire research has shown that homeowners can create ignition-resistant homes to prevent community wildfire disasters. And how is this possible? Oops. When I was in Paradise, we saw a few different outcomes. We saw a small number of homes that showed no damage. There was minor damage to landscape structures like this one in the foreground, but these homes fared better because they were built to newer codes and vegetation was not as established. Evergreen trees can survive wildfire. These trees are less vulnerable to embers, but they can ignite from the ground due to ladder fuels. Tree spacing and the slope of your property are also factors in how fire impacts your home. Research shows that the risk to your home is likely 90% to come from flying embers. Home ignitions result from conditions local to a home. A home's ignition vulnerabilities principally determine those home ignitions. This area of the home and its immediate surroundings is called the home ignition zone. This is a term that was coined by Jack Cohen. And I'm going to show you a little bit more about this image in just a minute. There are 3 types of exposures that lead to ignition: flame contact, radiant heat, and windblown embers. Windblown embers can ignite your neighbor's home, other structures, and then in a chain reaction, increase the risk to your home. Annual inspections are important, but you must address your property year-round. And this diagram is showing those 3 zones, the protection zones that are just immediate to your property. In particular, zone 1 and 2 in Oakland, and parcels are not necessarily as large as 100 feet for defensible space. So zone 1 is at 0 to 5. It's the edge of your home, right there, right at the edge, and is known as that home ignition zone. Zone 2 is 5 to 30 feet, and zone 3 is 30 to 100 feet. So start with zone 1 on your own property. Remove ladder fuels, dead overcrowded plants, and organic mulch right next to the house. Reduce dry fuels near structures, fences, and trellises, and replace flammable or old decks, fences, and gates. Now you're going to hear me say these things over and over again. And I want to show you a video that kind of brings home this concept of an ember storm. And it's just 2 minutes long, and then we'll come back.
So from start to finish, we're going to start with our ember generators, which we use to recreate a realistic ember exposure. Embers are those small burning and smoldering particles that may travel ahead of the fire front. And what we do with our generators is we create the realistic exposure, and in our wind tunnel, we're able to throw them at a building. And then we have a building that has two sides to it, a good side, which uses wildfire resistant construction, and what we're considering a typical building that we would see in a wildfire prone area. Exactly as we expected, that mulch on the ground there caught fire from the embers. The fire from the mulch burned up under this deck, and this whole deck was on fire. And so this fire on this deck caused flames right against the home. And then if we look there at the base of the door, it was actually the flames from this deck that burned through the bottom of the door. And on the inside of the house, we started to see smoke and flames. And so because this deck was a combustible material attached to the building, when the embers led to the ignition of this deck, we got flames inside of the building. Here we are on the wildfire resistant side of the house, where we had non-combustible siding, a 5-foot non-combustible zone, and 6-inch gap. We had a metal gutter and multi-pane windows. And we see, in comparison to the non-wildfire resistant side, this side had the same ember exposure. If you look here in the mulch, you can actually see some of the embers that had accumulated, but because they had no susceptible fuel to ignite, they just landed there and fizzled out. Now here we have ornamental vegetation that again is susceptible to the embers, but because it's more than 5 feet away from the home, it didn't have enough energy to ignite, and it never led to a flame impact on the building.
Okay, so our homes, they can be an emotional topic. Home maintenance and fire risk. How ready are you to take action? And why doesn't everyone do enough? It costs too much. I can't do it myself. I don't have time. My neighbor isn't doing anything. There's no deadline. Can any of you relate to this? You can take action to give your property the best chance. Reduce your risk and make small to large changes to reduce hazards. Get to know and work with your neighbors. Get everyone on board. All ages and abilities have something to offer in helping to create a fire-adapted neighborhood. Check in with your neighbors, especially if they are elderly, disabled, or have a medical condition, as their homes can have an impact on the work you do. Sorry, this is not wanting to advance all of a sudden. So much data is being collected by CAL FIRE and other agencies on how to improve the survivability of a home. And this chart on the left is just a pie chart that shows that newer homes built 2008 or later, that 50% receive no damage in the Camp Fire. This is where this study is from. And for older homes built before 2008, only 18% receive no damage. And the cost to build a new hardened home, according to this recent report, shows that a hardened home is similar to building cost to a typical home. And it shows these three components kind of, different costs, but in the end, the total cost balances out to roughly the same for a typical home as a wildfire resistant home. California is leading the way in preventative measures. 2 new disclosure laws went into effect in 2021. A seller must disclose a home's vulnerability to wildfires. Homes designated as in the high fire severity zone and built before 2010 must show any of the structure's vulnerability to wildfires. Owners must provide documentation stating that the property is also in compliance with local laws pertaining to defensible space. Now, I don't know how much of these are being enforced or how often, but these are things that are coming down the chute. And also, proposed new legislation and amendments to existing laws are continuing for new buildings in the wildland-urban interface. A new regulation would require insurance companies to factor in all wildfire safety actions taken by a property owner when pricing residential and commercial coverage. The regulations also aim to give consumers transparency about their wildfire risk score that insurance companies assign to properties. Currently, this is not something accessible to homeowners. And the Wildfire Mitigation Program is a Cal OES, Cal Fire, and FEMA partnered initiative aimed at strengthening communities by developing a home hardening grant program for property owners to retrofit homes that are in high fire risk areas. And this pilot is operating in 2 California counties right now with hopes to expand in the future. Next, I would like to show you some ideas on how to get started working with your neighbors. The FireWise program provides a collaborative framework to help neighbors get organized, perform assessments, and take action to increase the ignition resistance of their homes and community. And Oakland has just had its first neighborhood recognized as a FireWise community. Create a skills inventory using a shared database. So you would take neighborhoods, folks in your neighborhood in their like a family or by address, and they would list any special skills they had, like if you had any contractors or medical folks, and any special equipment folks might have, and then any special needs that your neighbors may have. You can customize it. Group smaller retrofit projects together to create a larger project that is more attractive to a contractor or handyman. And an example I've shown here would be replacing crawl space vents and or attic vents with recommended home hardened vents or screening. And the Diablo Firesafe Council has a cost share assistance program. It helps you to work with your neighbors to create a defensible space project. And this program is for Alameda and Contra Costa County residents. We receive funding. I'm on the board. We receive funding from a variety of sources. So get your application in so you can be added to the list. So we can't all just rebuild a brand new home, hardened home. So the next half of this talk, I'm going to show you a bunch of home components in a couple of different ways. The first way is going to be in a kind of a cost tier list way. And then the second half will be showing a little bit more detail with photographs. So cost tier 1, the easy stuff. Have situational awareness and be aware of red flag warnings. Sign up for AC alerts. Clear items around your home and remove debris from your property. Make your property inviting to firefighters by keeping the paths clear, your driveway clear. Install new 4-inch high visibility address signage. Make small repairs to your home and garage. Connect long hoses to hose spigots around your home. Cost tier 2, kind of the DIY or hire a helper stuff. Make repairs to your roof, fence, and deck before fire season. Seal small cracks or openings in walls. Screen foundation vents. Screen or replace your roof eaves. Replace vulnerably located siding with ignition-resistant material, and I'm going to go into that a little bit in a minute. Trim tree branches away from your roof. And cost tier 3, these are the larger retrofit projects that harden your home. Replace windows and skylights with dual pane and tempered glass. Replace the entire roof with an approved Class A rated roof. Replace siding with ignition-resistant materials. Replace your deck with ignition-resistant materials. Install a fire suppression system on the interior of your home. If your home is in a high fire risk area, you may be required to make some of these changes if you apply for a building permit. And so now I'm going to go through this again by these components and with a little bit more detail. So you'll become an expert in home inspection. So you want to clear vegetation away, like in these photographs. These folks probably before evacuating, swept all of this litter away from the home, at least 5 feet. They obviously didn't clear it all the way, but they may, I don't really know. This was a home in Paradise that survived. Fix your windows, make vent repairs, do all these things before a fire. Remove debris from your roof, clean gutters and clear skylights, make repairs to roofing materials, cut back tree canopies. All this dry material can be ignited by windblown embers. So these are just a couple examples. The clay tile roof is in disrepair. It needs to be, those roof tiles need to be replaced, and any kind of gaps anywhere that embers could settle should be cleared or blocked. On the right, there's a roof that the skylight is practically completely covered with pine needles. Remove debris from roof valleys. If fuel is exposed long enough, it can burn through to the attic. And add sheet metal, flashing or replace with a fiber cement siding at the roof to wall connection. And this is something I wanted to explain to you, that in this center photo, you have the lower roof and then the upper story wall intersecting. And you see all that leaf litter there. That is a vulnerability. And so the idea is to replace those rows or course of wood siding with flashing or a fiber cement siding to make it ember resistant and keep it clean. And then on the right is a dormer with a similar concept. You could just do the whole dormer in a fiber cement siding. Foundation vents. Screen foundation vents or use approved venting products designed to catch embers before they enter your crawl space. And these are some examples of some proprietary vents. You have BrandGuard, has a copper vent that has a baffle. And then on the right, you have Vulcan vents with a intumescent paint or coating that seals up during a fire event if it's exposed to heat. And then on the bottom right is another vent that has a screen and a baffle. E-vents can make your home vulnerable to windblown embers. Screen open E-vents with wire mesh, or retrofit your eave with a closed soffit to prevent embers from entering your attic. And the top right is some examples of those closed eaves, and also a typical eave, but a closed eave and also a vented closed eave. So vents are designed to create airflow and remove moisture above and below your living space, but they do make your home, vulnerable to these airborne embers because they get drawn inside and can ignite any combustible material that may be in your attic or your crawl space. So walk around your home and garage and repair or fill any openings with waterproof caulk. Look at trim, siding, utility penetrations, and the hose bibs themselves for gaps. Add sheet metal flashing or replace with a fiber cement siding at the lowest row of siding. So this is similar to the roof wall connection, but this is at the ground. So new foundations are required to have a 6-inch exposed height of concrete at the bottom. And you treat this first 6 inches as like a vertical part of the non-combustible zone. The diagram, the detail in the middle is kind of like what was in the video just recently, where you have a deck connected to a house, and in this detail they're showing 6 inches of metal flashing to create a disconnect between the wall and the deck. The fences. The best practice is to use non-combustible fence materials. A more open design also makes it difficult for windblown embers to accumulate at the bottom of the panels and posts. And so these are just some examples on the right side of a concrete fence that has wood texture, a metal and screen fence that's open, and then this is just an approved product that's made with bamboo that also is ember resistant. And then you want to also keep your fence clear of debris. And then another option is to separate your fence from your house and make the last 5 feet of the fence a non-combustible material to reduce the chance of the fence bringing fire to your home. And for gates, use non-wood gate posts or even the gate itself. Unhinge the gate on the opposite side of your home. When you evacuate, leave the gate open, and this creates a disconnect from your home and also makes it safer for firefighters when they may enter your property. So vinyl windows and single pane glass are the most vulnerable and can fail. And so options for replacement would be dual pane windows, and then better would be dual pane and tempered glass or laminated. And another option is to add exterior metal window shutters to the windows. So many window products are now clad on the outside with metal or fiberglass. These window upgrades all buy you time, and they also save on energy costs. New skylights in high fire risk areas are required also to have an 1/8-inch metal mesh screen. A Class A rated roof is required for new roofs in the wildland-urban interface. There are many options depending on the style of your home or your budget. So examples would be a concrete or clay roof tiles. An approved metal roof, like the photo in the bottom left, is a standing seam metal roof. And then fiberglass, asphalt, composition shingles, otherwise known as a comp shingle roof, that's the bottom right. It's probably the most common roof material, but it does have to be rated Class A. A wood shake or shingle roof, even if it's treated, is typically not allowed in California anymore. Fiber cement siding will not ignite when exposed to direct flame. Fire can burn untreated wood and melt vinyl siding products. It is the ability of the wall assembly to confine a fire, so siding material is an important factor in the protection of you and your home. And again, this buys you time. And here are a couple of examples of two siding materials. One is the very well-known hardy plank, and it's the fiber cement siding. And then there's another material, another siding material that is made of fly ash and polymer composites. It's called boral. Both of these siding materials can still transfer heat and burn if exposed to direct flame long enough, but they are considered more ember resistant if the house is also maintained. And speaking of maintenance, a stucco-clad home, if maintained, will not ignite. It can provide a 1-hour fire rating if applied in 3 layers over a reinforcing mesh to create an almost 1-inch thick wall assembly. Decks should be clear of debris and dead vegetation, and a deck is vulnerable from above and below. Long-term exposure to embers can risk ignition of the siding of the home and can spread to other areas of the structure. And do not store anything flammable. Do not store anything under your deck. And these are 3 deck examples of decks that are really cleared below. One is screened. Another one is just completely clear on the top and bottom. They could cut back the grass a little bit, but these are all examples of hardened decks. And most deck boards are combustible. Here are some examples of other ideas for decking. So one is this bamboo product again. It is approved by the State Fire Marshal. And then a fire retardant waterproof membrane decking. This deck has a Class A rating. It's up in the Berkeley Hills. There's Trex decking, another approved material. And then the detail I just wanted to spend a minute on is a built-up deck. It has fire retardant plywood, waterproof membrane, a drainage mat. This is a pretty hardened deck material, and it's topped with ceramic tile. So now it's time for you to make a plan, and you have options on where to start. We have the Oakland Firesafe Council's assessment checklist and many others that we will share later. And we also have these links that I in particular think are very good. They have different checklists and information, and we are putting all of this in the chat so that you can copy and paste it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sheryl. Great presentation. Do we have any questions? I'm not seeing any in the chat right now, but we could take a question or two if anyone has a specific question for Sheryl. Please type it in the chat. No? Okay.
All right.
Our next speaker is Wendy Tokuda, and I'm sure probably most people know Wendy from her not only her news anchor position for many years here in the Bay Area, but also for her community work around fire safety and vegetation management. Extraordinary work. So Wendy, if you'd like to start your presentation and take it away.
She's muted.
Oh.
Oh no, I'm like Grandpa Simpson. I'm like muted. And when I was muted, what I was saying was I'm mortified by the technical challenges here that I have ahead of me with the slideshow. But so I'm gonna share the screen and take my slideshow and see how this works here. Well, I'll tell you what, I think it's going to be a better view if I do the presenter views. So I'm going to go ahead and take it like this. And so my assignment here was to talk about how to get groups in the community working more to make group spaces. We all live in the hills. We live in Oakland as part of Oakland because it is so beautiful. Oh, that's not the view that I wanted. Well, that's too bad. We're just going to have to use it. Because technically, folks, this is as good as I can do. So I want to talk about how we can make our community safer, not just our homes. And I've come to the conclusion, whoop, I want to go back there, that the only way we're able to do that is really by working together. That last screen I was showing you, whoop, back to that screen. Two of your best friends here, volunteers and green waste bins. Because if you can fill one of those waste bins, it's that much more less fuel load in your neighborhood. And this is what we're up against here. I took this picture just today up on Skyline, and you're all familiar with this. You're all in this meeting because you're aware of this problem. So I'm not going to harp on it, but you can see all the dead wood in here. You can see the fire ladders, the branches that start on the ground or fallen wood that can lead the fire up into the canopy of the tree. So you really get a good rip-roaring wildfire storm going. And this picture taken in our neighborhood is a perfect illustration of why these fires in California have become so catastrophic in the last few years, because we have allowed this brush to overgrow. We haven't maintained these areas, and we have drought, which has made the vegetation drier, and the trees are weaker, and you get bark beetles, and you get all kinds of pests and funguses killing vegetation, and it all adds up to a bunch of fuel kind of sitting there waiting for a firestorm. So when this ignites, it literally explodes. It doesn't just start a fire. And I thought I'd use one case study to show sort of how I have dealt with it along with groups of volunteers. This was an area in February of 15 that a group of volunteers I work with, we volunteered pulling French broom, which was, of course, my obsession that started this whole thing. But for me, anyway, we came upon this infestation of French broom. And it wasn't just that there was French broom here. You can see there was a lot of dead brush around. In fact, this is what it looked like in some of the worst parts. It was dead French broom, dead Scotch broom, which is actually a different species, blended in, and all of it just standing there. And you could see, if any of you were scouts, you could see if you lit a match on the bottom of that, you would really get a huge firestorm going. So we decided to have some work parties in this area. And we did that. We got in volunteers, we pulled out some of the stuff and had it hauled away. And then we realized that in this area, there was really a ton of broom. And this area, we've also found out, was not owned by the East Bay Regional Park, so we were volunteering for. It was actually owned by the city of Oakland and had been unmaintained for years. We don't really know how long, but it's the area, it's the big, large open space that surrounds the Police Activities League camp, if any of you know that, on Skyline, near Skyline Boulevard. And so here was all this wonderful French broom. And I became acquainted with the City of Oakland's Adopt Spot department, the stewardship department. And they said, hey, you know what? If you formally adopt this spot, and this is I really want you to remember this program if you're interested at all in getting some things done, because it was really, really terrific. As you said, if you adopt this spot formally, you sign on to take some responsibility and kind of steward it, you know, we can get you tools, we will help you find volunteers. And that particular summer, they said, we'll get you fixed up with this youth program in Oakland called Oakland Works, and we'll get these teenagers to come up and help pull French broom. And so that summer, we worked with them and we got a lot of broom pulled in that area. And so for many years now, I've been working with the Adopt-A-Spot folks, and they have been just terrific. I mean, it's a terrific support group. And one of the best things they can do for you is to help get these wonderful, wonderful waste bins, 20 cubic yard, 30 cubic yard when you're feeling really ambitious. But, you know, every time you fill one of those, it's that much less fuel load to light on fire. The other group that I have worked with from the get-go is Friends of Sausal Creek, and that is our own wonderful nonprofit environmental group here up in the Oakland Hills that serves the whole watershed, or seeks to really steward the whole watershed of Sausal Creek, which leads into the bay. And they not only help get volunteers and show you, about native plants and invasive plants, but they also have a nursery and they grow plants that they can provide so you can restore areas when you do pull out invasive plants. And a lot of areas have enough native plants that they fill in on their own, but when they don't, this is what we would do. But what we found was that a lot of our stewardship work began to morph into fuel reduction because of these huge fires that were happening all over California and really getting scary, these fires that Sheryl was talking about up in Paradise. So we started to have regular work parties up at Pal Camp. These were some missionaries from the Mormon temple that we worked with for some time up in that area. And what we would do is limb up trees. We would trim out or pull a lot of the French broom or other invasive plants in the area we were working in. And we would even cut down some of the really skinny Monterey pines that were crowding these forests. And you guys have been around Monterey pines a lot now. They have a limited lifespan. They're not native here. They're highly flammable. And after 60 or 80 years, they die or they fall down. And either way, it's just not good. So we would cut down some of the smaller ones, but the big ones, volunteers could not get out. And so what we I started to think about, I started finding out about these fuel reduction grants. And Sheryl mentioned one source of these grants, small grants that you can apply for to do some of the heavier work, to thin out some of these larger Monterey pines. Like you can see the one in the background there that we were able to remove with the help of one of these grants. And the group actually that has been the most useful for me, is the one that Sheryl mentioned, the Diablo Firesafe Council, which provides money to folks in Alameda County, just normal folks like us in Alameda and Contra Costa County. You have to have, because we were working in Pal Camp, it was Oakland city property, so I had to get permission from all of the city departments involved. And I worked with the stewardship department, Adopt-a-Spot folks. And you will also have to match it with volunteer labor. And the volunteer labor is priced at about $20-something an hour, I think. But, we're able to bring in then a professional crew that can cut down some of the larger trees and chip the trees into chips that will hold down some of those really flammable flash fuels and weedy grasses. What I tried to do was to get as much bang for the buck, because $5,000 really isn't that much when you're talking about cutting down trees. So I would go, how many skinny Monterey pines can you thin out with $5,000? And we would kind of work from there. And we were actually able to get a lot done. Over the years, I've gotten quite a few of these grants here at Pal Camp and also in Beaconsfield Canyon. And I'll just give you some before and after pictures to show you what we've done. This is one of the before pictures with our arborist. And this is that same area after we were able to trim down some trees and cut some of the brush out of there. This is a before picture in another part of the forest there. And this is what it looked like after we removed some of those skinny trees. Now we're leaving the redwoods, we're leaving the oaks, we're leaving the bays, we're leaving the larger heritage trees, but we're thinning out dead trees, and we were thinning out the skinny saplings, the Monterey pine saplings that were crowding that forest, like the ones I showed you in that first slide, or one of the first slides up on Skyline Boulevard. Here's one of our before pictures. And this is what it looked like after. You can see the redwood tree to the right here standing, but now that redwood tree is going to have the benefit of more water because we've gotten rid of some of those, the invasive Monterey pines. It has more area to grow. So it's going to be a healthier tree. These are a bunch of acacias that were actually leaning over the buildings of Pal Camp. This is before we cut the trees down with another grant. This is a series of grants. This is not all one grant. This is what it looked like after. This is what the fence looked like before we cut down the trees. This is what it looked like after. All of this had to be matched with volunteer labor. And what we would have these young people do is to, in this case, this was some Monterey pines that had fallen down on an area with acacia trees. So it was really like a briar patch of huge fallen trees on top of acacias growing through them. I mean, it was really a mess. It was right on Skyline. But you could pull out some of the acacia saplings and some of the other trees we could limb up. We got a couple of grants, or one grant in here. This is what one of those, they were all falling over this oak tree. This is what it looked like before. This is what we were able to do after liberating this oak tree so we would be free to grow. This is what it looked like before with all those fallen trees. This is what that looked like after when we cut that down. The volunteers hauled so much debris down the hill that it made this huge pile, and it was more than what the city could haul away with public works, or certainly more than we could bag. So we actually used part of a grant to chip that wood and to get rid of it. And that's what that looked like. You can see before and after. So, you know, between using the volunteer labor and these small grants we were able to get through Diablo Firesafe, and there were some other places we got grants from, but the most consistent and the most user-friendly was Diablo Firesafe. And we have the links for Diablo Firesafe and also the Adopt a Spot program, and also Friends of Sausal Creek. And all of these organizations and departments have been really helpful to us in getting a lot of fuel load cleared out of this area and out of Beaconsfield Canyon as well, where we have a volunteer group working regularly. But here are the things sort of that I've learned over the years. I really do feel like a lot of this work, you know, we can get the city to do some of it, or we can pressure the city to try to get it to do more. The truth is right now it doesn't have the money. So if you want to be safer right now, volunteers are going to be key. And that's the unfortunate truth for the time being. And I think the local jurisdictions are waking up that we have a real serious fire problem and trying to do things about it. But until then, volunteers remain key, and having regular work parties really makes a difference because people get it on their calendars, they remember it, and they get invested in the area. I found it's really important. We always tell the volunteers first, don't get hurt, stay safe, feed them. Food makes a huge difference. And I always try to let them know that we're so grateful for their work because they're giving up their morning to make us safer. I've learned to leverage their work for these small grants. Again, the Diablo Firesafe Council. I've also gotten a grant from California Fire Foundation. Cal Fire is a bigger bite now. They are coming up with a lot more money, but that is a big deal, a much more heavy duty grant lift. On city property, you are going to need jurisdiction. You're going to need to have your volunteers sign waivers. You can do all that through the Adopt a Spot program. If you do get a grant to cut trees, you will need approval from multiple departments. You can't just go in there and cut things down and pull things on city property. You need to have permission. I document. I try to keep organized records. I'm not always successful, but I try because it becomes really useful in getting volunteers and then also getting grant money. And I've also learned to have realistic expectations. You know, it's really not an easy thing, even just getting a $5,000 grant, getting the volunteers together, getting the food together, getting all the city departments to sign off. It can get complicated, but again, I sort of have come to the conclusion that it's the only way that we're going to get a lot of these things done, you know? And I've just been really grateful to the volunteers that I've been able to work with. So back to the Oakland Firesafe Council slide, Doug. And I don't know if people have questions for either me or for Sheryl, but we're here to ask questions if you want. And if not, no problem, we'll move ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much, Wendy. That was a great presentation, and Sheryl too. Thanks so much. I wanted to note a couple things. Sheryl, this is Sheryl's second webinar town hall that she has done for the Oakland Firesafe Council, so very much appreciated. And she does a lot of work with. She's president of Diablo Firesafe Council and Berkeley Fire Department and other jurisdictions. So thank you very much, Sheryl, and of course Wendy as well. And Wendy has done a ton of volunteer work in the hills, and I seem to run across Wendy working, pulling broom really quite often. And yeah, it's just great work from you both, and we really appreciate it. So questions, were there any questions?
Yeah, there's a couple questions, Doug. I just wanted to, there was one way back. Somebody had asked if the recording was going to be made available, and we will be making that available on the Oakland Firesafe Council website. And then also we'll send out a follow-up newsletter with a recording link in that as well. And we'll be putting it on the Oakland Firesafe YouTube channel, right?
Yes.
And then there's two questions that just came in. Wendy, somebody wants to know where the PAL camp is.
Yeah, and I should have showed you a picture. It's like an actual camp. I mean, like there are little cabins there and everything that the Police Activities League runs. And it is on Skyline, or it's off Skyline Boulevard, but it's tucked between Redwood Regional Park and Roberts Regional Park. It's technically part of Joaquin Miller, and the closest parking lot to it would be the Redwood Bowl staging area parking lot that belongs to Roberts Regional Park. It's not far from the planetarium of Chabot. It's not far from Chabot, and the Police Activities League does take kids up there. They take students up there, and you can call the Police Activities League about using it. It's underutilized, and I think sadly it's underutilized.
Hey, there's another question here asking about recommended fire resistant plant list.
I can comment on that. I have spent a lot of time researching that, but it's actually a very loaded question. There are lists out there. You could easily search for them. Marin Firesafe Council is one of them. But there are a lot. There's a list on CalFlora that I have. But really, there is a whole other group of scientists and practitioners that say we really shouldn't have plant lists more than we should just have advice on where to plant and what to plant. Yes, but maintenance is a huge part of that. So yes, you can find recommended fire resistant plant lists. They're not really fire resistant. I call them fire safer. And but a lot of it is placement. You know, you don't want anything too risky right up near your house, and that includes mulch. But you also, it's maintenance.
So if I could just add to that, maintenance, specifically pruning, and that may sound simple, but one of the worst fire plants I have been told, and this is by a fire marshal, that people have in their yards is juniper. And the reason for that is people usually just prune it on the outside, so it's like a lollipop. But if you look inside, if you go to some of those juniper plants, and I'm not saying all of them, if somebody's really been pruning it well, that may be a whole different deal. But if you peek inside, a lot of those juniper plants is just solid, dead brush. And you know, anytime you see some of these bushes and they may be all green on the outside, but peek inside and see what's dead on the inside there. And that's when you really see where the fuel load is. You know, that's where you see the flammable stuff.
That is a great example. Juniper also has a lot of oils in it. So it does, you know, if it ignites for any reason, especially if it's close to your house, I just would not put any near the house. But it's well maintained. I mean, Wendy's absolutely right. The dead fuels, the older parts of the plants, if they're not maintained.
Some of the other things I think to watch out for in the Oakland Hills, pampas grass is, especially after it's flowered, and that flowering white part that waves in the grass, waves in the breeze, is highly flammable. Anything that holds on to its dead branches. Coyote bush is a bad one. French broom, of course, is notorious because it holds on to its dead branches, and it holds on to these little fine branches that are like the perfect tinder. So it has tinder and kindling all on one tree, and it creates a great fire ladder to sort of lift the fire up into the canopy, which makes it, and that French broom can get up to 15 feet tall. So, or 10 feet tall, and really lift it up into the trees, which is what makes it such a danger. And I think the thing that's scary is, you know, your yard is one thing, but if your neighbor or your neighborhood has a fire, you know, has some fire safety issues, you have a fire safety issue. And it becomes incumbent upon you for your own safety to deal with that on a community level. Or at least a neighbor, you know, a neighbor discussion level.
Work together.
Yeah, it really is.
We have somebody asking about, do spray on fire retardant materials work? Cheryl?
So this gets asked a lot, and you will start to see, you know, we're starting to see products come out, but I spoke to Stephen Quarles about this, who is sort of, you know, he has done a lot of the research, and he said that the problem with those, especially if a homeowner is trying to get that onto the house before evacuating, you know, there's a lot of things that can go wrong. Any kind of foams or gels, they just don't last very long. You know, they evaporate. So it's really not where you want to focus your attention. You really want to do the recommendations that I've just spent time on, because those, you know, they've done the research and they're showing that, you know, if you take these actions, your home has a lot better chance.
Thank you. Going back to vegetation and trees, Wendy, somebody was asking, what happened with the FEMA offer to remove the eucalyptus? I know it was withdrawn, but how can we address eucalyptus?
Oh, this must be the controversial thing that Cheryl mentioned, huh, Cheryl?
Well, I mean, this sounds like Claremont Canyon to me.
Well, the eucalyptus are everywhere, but well, as you know, or you probably know, I think I would guess that most of the people, or a lot of the people tuning into this webinar, are aware. The FEMA offer, actually, the FEMA grant was granted, but it was not granted to all parties in the end, after one group sued and got an injunction because they said it was not adequately approved, didn't have adequate environmental CEQA permission or review. In the end, Berkeley was able to get some of the money, and the East Bay Regional Parks was able to get money, but Oakland was not, because of it did not have a vegetation plan. And the wonderful Sue Piper and Ken Benson, Ken actually probably knows more about this than anybody, but we're able to help get a vegetation plan in place eventually for the city of Oakland, but not in time enough to save that money. How to address the eucalyptus? Well, I think you all know how sticky that is. You know, the evidence that there was an organization that was able to hold up that FEMA grant for 10 years with a lawsuit. So, you know, it is controversial. There are people who love the eucalyptus. Most scientists, most scientific literature um, says that it is flammable because of the oils. And if any of you have been around eucalyptus out in the woods, you'll see it. The bark comes down every year just in sheets, like huge sheets of cardboard. And along with all of the leaves that fall from it, it really, one large tree sheds a huge amount of leaf load. And this just entire, you know, it sheds the whole tree load of bark. Well, I don't know if it sheds a whole tree load of bark, but it sheds a lot of bark, some of which just hangs from other trees around it. So just the debris from it creates a problem. And I don't know, Ken, if you want to add to that, or Cheryl.
Yeah.
If you want to add to that.
Just briefly, we could take 2 hours to talk about the prior FEMA grant and what did or did not happen to it. Suffice it to say that fuel management and community fuel breaks are an important alternative and a weapon against the spread of wildfire. And whether that's complete removal and or thinning along their crown, it makes sense to do those actions based on whatever the fire science happens to be in the terrain that happens to be there, no matter the variety of tree that is growing along that ridgeline. We know that, the scientists know that, and efforts are taken to do that. There are many things that need to be considered when looking at tree removal. I saw in the chat, there's been some questions about where can people go to get grants for tree removal, specifically eucalyptus or Monterey pine. And large tree removals not inexpensive. And Wendy gave some very good ideas where during her multi-grant application, they used it more for thinning than direct removal because of the cost of removal. But I've also seen other homeowners groups and others pool their resources so that if the Diablo Fire Safe Council grant money can't be used for the tree, then they go and find sources, other sources, or pull together that can be used for the tree removal as needed. Again, it's going to take a creative approach because there's an awful lot of Monterey pine that's at the end of its life cycle in the Berkeley and Oakland Hills. And there's also an awful lot of eucalyptus that died off or is in drought seared conditions over the last couple of years in that same area. So there's an awful lot of trees out there that are of a concern. But Wendy, it could take us forever to talk about that FEMA grant. So I won't waste time on that. I'll go back to others in case they have questions of the.
No, but one good point though that you do raise, and you're right, the maintenance of the tree again is crucial. Is that there are a lot of dead trees out there right now because of climate change and because of the weather and because of some fungal patterns that have damaged some of them. So some of them are coming back up from the bottom, resprouting, but there's a lot of dead wood out there.
A lot of dead wood.
So yeah, we could talk a lot about this, and we actually still have some more questions about eucalyptus and related to that. But if we could just take a break for a second and address a question that was a little bit back. Cheryl, maybe you could answer, somebody was asking about ivy on fences.
Right. Well, again, ivy can have woody parts, and it's not just green leaves. It actually, the woody parts get thicker and thicker, kind of like the juniper. It's best just to not grow anything on your fence. It's also a maintenance issue. So, definitely if you're in a high fire area, I would try to keep your fence clear of any vegetation.
And going back to eucalyptus. someone was asking if they could apply for a grant to remove eucalyptus from their property. Would that be something? She has 2 large trees and it costs $3,500 to remove 1 tree.
Yeah, I can comment on that on behalf of the Diablo Firesafe Council. The program, the cost share program, is designed for groups, neighbors, multiple neighbors, not one. We really are looking for something that benefits more than just one homeowner. We also are not just giving out grants for cutting down trees. We look at the whole picture and kind of look at what are the most important things to do on your property with the program. You are welcome to have your own trees cut at your expense or to work with your neighbors. But as far as the grant program, we're looking for groups and we're looking for things that benefit more than one homeowner, more than one property owner.
Thank you. And we've got Marty Kaplan here. Hey, Marty. And he's asking, what have you guys learned about how to get neighbors, those resistant to external control or unwelcome surveillance, engaged in ignition resistance activities?
This is a really excellent question.
A whole
And
talk could be done on this.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is what makes Doug Mosher so important, and Jim, the work you do, and Ken. This is why I'm so grateful you are all doing what you're doing, because education is the start of it. I mean, I think that what I have found, I saw another question on there. Someone was talking about neighbors' bushes and concern about living with those bushes. And I sometimes, one thing I've tried a number of different things. One thing I have learned is it never worked to get, when I was trying to get volunteers to pull French broom, for example, or pull invasive plants, it never helped to get kind of, and this is my word, okay, for me to get, when I got preachy about it, it totally backfired. I totally stopped. I learned I had to just not do that at all. Like even when people would come up and ask, unless they asked, how would I volunteer to do that? I would never say, hey, come and help me. Because it always like blew up, I've tried a couple of different things with neighbors, and it's touchy with neighbors because I think it's really important to get along with your neighbors. And if you say the wrong thing or you get them thinking you're preachy, it really makes things very uncomfortable. I've tried pulling their broom for them. I did that for years for a couple of neighbors. I remember asking another neighbor, could I pull the broom in his front yard? He was about a block from my home and I was concerned about it. And it was, spreading down the street. And he said, oh no, I like them because they keep the cars from, they prevent them from going through and hitting my house. At which I realized I could do nothing about that. There was nothing I could do about that. So the only thing I have found is education. And even with that, you just have to be really patient. And I am really open to, I really want to hear what all the rest of you have to say about this, because I bang my head on this wall all the time.
Thank you, Wendy. And that is a good points you made. I'm afraid I'm going to have to call time, although, because we have just a couple minutes left and a few things to go over. Housekeeping, and I know we didn't get to everybody's questions, and maybe we can take these offline and then email folks back with answers to the questions that we weren't able to get to. And then just one more thing, we do have a program. There's a program called FireWise USA. We really encourage people to check that out. The Firesafe Council Oakland has a person, Macy, who will help your neighborhood work together to work on vegetation management, work on making your neighborhood more fire safe, your community more fire safe. So please look at the FireWise USA information that we have on our website. So thank you all, and sorry that we didn't get to everybody's questions, but we'll try to follow up with those. So just moving forward here, we have Information, Cheryl mentioned, we have guides that are part of our Oakland Community Preparedness and Response website as part of the Oakland Firesafe Council. So here are some guides we encourage you to look at. One of those is number 12 on Firewise USA. So our website is oaklandcpnr.org. Go to the tab that says guides and you'll find these. So we have a guide on Firewise that explains it, a guide on defensible space and landscaping. You'll see there on the screen, home hardening, fire safe planting. We do have a checklist as well. Take it for what it's worth, but we took that from Fire Safe Marin mostly. And then we have that checklist for home wildfire hardening. So please take a look on our OCPNR website at our guides and you'll find a lot of information. Next, mark your calendar, Kat.
Yeah. First of all, you're all welcome to join us this Saturday. Take a break from helping Wendy at Beaconsfield if you can, or other
No,
places.
come to Beaconsfield.
Fill up that green waste can. But we have our meeting. It won't be our February meeting, by the way. It'll be our April meeting, and it's 10:30 to noon. And if you'll visit our website at oaklandfiresafecouncil.org, you can find out how to join that call at on Saturday. And you know, there's also an event coming up this Saturday at Montclair Park, which is a Montclair service group and a firefighter appreciation event from 9 to 4 p.m. So please mark your calendar on those items. So thank you.
Thank you, Ken. And then our fourth and final town hall, the Savvy Prepared Communities Town Hall, is going to be May 26th at 6:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. And the focus is going to be evacuations and the Zone Haven application. So we are planning to have the CEO of Zone Haven, we hope, be able to talk, and then also someone from Oakland Fire Department Emergency Management Services about evacuations and Zone Haven. And we have a guide on Zone Haven also on our OCPNR site. If you're not familiar with what Zone Haven is, please take a look at that. Newsletter.
All right, I'd love to thank you everybody for attending and would really love for you to sign up for our newsletter if you haven't done so already. I'm putting the link in the chat, and we will be, like I mentioned earlier, we will be following up with the link to the recording to this presentation, and then also reminders about the upcoming Savvy Town Hall in May, and all sorts of other things pertinent to our area and disaster preparedness and wildfire safety. And quick question, Wendy, somebody was asking where Beaconsfield is. Can you answer that quickly?
Wendy, you're on mute.
Oh no, Grandpa Simpson again. Let's see. Yeah, Beaconsfield Canyon, and we would love to have you, is at the intersection of Beaconsfield Court. Hold on a minute, I'll get you an exact. It's right off Chelton Drive. It's at the intersection of Beaconsfield Place and Keswick Court. Yeah, you enter it though coming off of Chilton Drive, and we have a big waste bin, and we would love any help we could get trying to fill that thing.
Thank you.
By the way, Wendy's done a great job there over the years, so that's great. And first of all, before we go, we're a nonprofit, so feel free to donate early and donate often so we can keep bringing the wonderful Wendy Tokuda and the marvelously detailed Sheryl Drinkwater to you in future series, and so that we can provide the kind of guides and support that Doug and Jen have on our OCP on our site. Anyway, I want to thank everyone, and especially Wendy and Cheryl. You did an excellent job tonight. Thank you both.
Thank you, Ken.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, just wanted to mention if we didn't get to somebody's question tonight and you wanted to have a follow-up, I have put some contact information in the link, or you can go directly to the Oakland Firesafe Council website or OCPNR website and contact us that way, and we'll try and get you an answer.
All right,
That's
go
it.
Warriors.
Go Warriors.
Go Warriors.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night and stay safe.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.